The year was 1999. You've become a hit global sensation in playgrounds all over the world. Trading cards, TV shows, video games. Pokemania has taken the world by storm, and it's all in the palm of your hands. But you can't relax just yet. The big battle's approaching, and you've got to prepare for what's to come. They are coming to get you. Mayday, mayday, mayday! You're being attacked from multiple fronts. Yu-Gi-Oh's attempting to eat up your trading card game market share. Digimon has attempted an ambush on Saturday morning TV. And what's that? The .com has fallen! Everybody, stand your ground! Phew! Thankfully, it was all just a phase. Son, you've managed to survive the onslaught and everything's all fine and dandy again. Now what? Well, as your reward for making it through, now you've earned the privilege of perpetually struggling to stay relevant for as long as you are relevant. So as a company, how do you exactly stay relevant? Do you A. continue to innovate and expand your web of influence, slowly and surely building up your army of loyal followers to eventually topple down the world order? Or B. rest your laurel and stick to the formula, vomiting out the same game every 3 or so years? Ding ding ding! You're right, it's C. This is all bullshit because I'm framing this in such bad faith that it's really not insightful in the slightest. And I'd like to apologize for that. But that's the thing, you see. For a franchise that has been long criticized for being overly risk-averse and simply lacking in innovation, it's a bit odd that it somehow managed to have transcended its fate of just becoming another fad of the late 90s. Now, that's not to dismiss the criticism entirely. The concerns regarding the static state of the mainline game are most definitely valid. And if you look at the video game sales number, Pokemon never really managed to recapture its peak during the initial worldwide craze. But looking at it this way also kind of misses the mark, since there are just a bunch of other things that need to be considered, like how the mainline video games are only one part of the Pokemon Company's long list of portfolio, or the fact that the sales number of the consoles itself influenced the sales numbers of the games it was meant for. It's not really fair to compare the sales number of a 3DS game to say that of a Switch, for example. There are a lot of different narratives that you can paint from the same graph, after all. From my own experience at least, when I was at school, there weren't a lot of people who still played Pokemon come 3rd gen. Granted, people in my year probably just progressively grew out of it, but Pokemon also noticeably became less represented in mass media. Oh god. Do people still actually use the phrase mass media? Of course, it's asinine to expect constant exponential growth, but if you're a for-profit company, this should have been a wake-up call for you to do something. Innovate, perhaps, otherwise you risk a slow descent to obscurity. But again, there are some things that need to be considered. You see, innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. Growth doesn't necessarily have to occur intrinsically. In fact, I'd argue that one of the most momentous features ever added to the franchise wasn't even an innovation per se, but rather more of an adoption of the current hot new technology, at least at the time. That technology being Wi-Fi. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl was released in 2006 in Japan and in 2007 for the rest of the world. Except for you, South Korea. Gotta wait for an additional year. The game was released on the Nintendo DS, the first Nintendo console that supported wireless capabilities, which enabled online connectivity through the now defunct Nintendo Wi-Fi connection service. Now, why was this so game-changing exactly? Pokemon has always been a single-player RPG, yet despite that, part of what makes the franchise so marketable in the first place was the social aspect of the game. Gotta catch 'em all is a notorious slogan of the franchise, after all, and back in the day, you can only catch 'em all if you actually socialized and traded with actual people IRL. Unless you're one of those well-off jelly boys who owns 2 consoles, each equipped with different versions of the game, bypassing the need for actual human interaction. But I digress. And with the introduction of online play, players aren't restricted to just their neighborhoods anymore. This opened the possibility for people all over the world to battle and trade with one another. This opened the possibility for a large-scale tournament to be held. This opened the possibility for Pokemon to be competitive. At the end of a Pokemon battle, there will always be a winner and a loser. So what I meant by competitive in this sense is that the game now facilitates players to actually go out and test their skills on a much larger scale. You can be the best football player in your school, but that doesn't mean you're going to be the next Francesco Totti all of a sudden. In the same vein, you can be the best Pokemon trainer amongst your peers, but that's not really saying much now, does it? And sure, while a win-loss ratio isn't something that should dictate your worth as a human being, loser, it does give you an idea if you've got what it takes to be the very best. So, how can you be the very best? In the world of competitive Pokemon, there are 2 main formats that people follow. The Video Game Championship, commonly abbreviated to the VGC, and Smogon. The VGC is the official format that is sanctioned by the Pokemon Company, while Smogon is entirely fan-driven. And what exactly is Smogon? Well, it's a website that was launched on the 18th of December 2004. Basically, it's a forum dedicated for anything Pokemon related. And within that forum, the progenitors of Smogon essentially theory-crafted entire formats. Okay, but what's the difference between VGC and Smogon in terms of gameplay? Well, the biggest difference between the two is that VGC is a doubles metagame where you bring in 6 Pokemons and select 4, whereas Smogon is a predominantly singles 6v6 format. Though it does have others, which also includes a 6v6 doubles. Smogon implements a tier system where Pokemons are classified into several groups based on their perceived power and usage in competitive play, whereas VGC only implements a blanket banning system. There are still several other differing mechanics, so I'll just show them on the screen right here. In the early years, Smogon was hands down the more popular format between the two. So you kinda have to wonder, how did a group of prehistoric Redditors create the most widely adopted rule set at the time? Interestingly, it was in no small part enabled by the Pokemon Company themselves. You see, the rivaling VGC rule set took its sweet time to be conceived. It was only formally introduced prior to the 2009 Pokemon World Championship. And by then, Pokemon Platinum was already released. Before this, the Pokemon World Championship only held trading card game tournaments, so this was the first major event where Pokemon sanctioned a video game tourney. There were several smaller tournaments before this, such as during Pokemon's 10th anniversary tour back in 2006, but no official rule set that was guaranteed to be supported down the line at least had been set in stone yet. In comparison, Smogon started all the way back in 2004. But hold on, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl first released in 2006, yet Smogon had somehow already started creating a format by 2004. That doesn't make any sense. So this is the part where I admit that the whole premise of this video isn't entirely accurate. While wireless connectivity was only introduced when 4th Gen was released, Pokemon battles through the interwebs were already a thing even before then. You see, there was this little tool called Pokemon Battle Simulator, which allowed you to partake in a simulated Pokemon battle through the web. Basically, it's what Shoddy Battle is. No? Well, it's basically what Pokemon Showdown is. Now, Pokemon Battle Simulator in general is a topic that I'll further cover in a later section. So for now, the main point here is that with the help of this tool, the progenitors of Smogon have started to work on creating a standardized metagame, which eventually became the format we all know today. Alright, now that you're familiar with the competitive landscape, All that's left for you to be the very best then is to head out and battle people. Right? Well, unfortunately, the game at this stage doesn't have any random matchmaking mechanism. So in order to find an opponent, you first need to get their friend code, which means you have to go out and ask people if they want to partake in some heated Pokemon battle. One of the more popular places to do so is through internet forums such as Pokemon Elite 2000, Maryland, Cerebi, and Smogon itself. But personally, I use this little hip site, not sure if you guys have heard about it, called YouTube, where there's a community of people posting their online Pokemon battles. At the bottom of the video, there's a comment section which kind of became a quasi-online chat board where you can post your invites on. Since you have to actively go out in search of opponents, you actually have to talk and interact with people before even playing the game. This kind of environment was conducive to building a community, and the competitive Pokemon scene was born. Or I guess grew, because it had already existed before this. And there was so much potential here. This could have been the second wind the Pokemon Company needed, and they really could have used it at this point in time. But unfortunately, there were also a number of things holding competitive Pokemon back from actually finding a breakthrough. For one, the aforementioned matchmaking system, while quirky, was very clunky, which may have deterred people from actually trying it out. And this only scratches the surface of the things holding competitive Pokemon back. You see, in order to do well in a game, you would first need to understand the mechanics at play. And in Pokemon, a lot of these mechanics are quite challenging to parse. To build a competitive team, you would need to optimize the stats of each Pokemon. This is especially important in the competitive scene because every single stat point counts. A single point is what could separate your Magnezone from outspeeding to being outsped by the opponent's Scizor. It's especially important in the case of a mirror match. And to min-max the stats of your Pokemon, you would need to learn what influences their stats in the first place. Now, keep in mind that back then, resources to understand these mechanics were quite few and far in between. It's there, but you have to actively go out and search for it, which is not something that the average Joe would probably do. And there were quite a few things you have to know, some easier to parse than others. The concept of nature is quite easy to understand, and at least this information wasn't tucked behind some hidden values, unlike EVs and IVs. And back in 4th Gen, there weren't even any built-in ways to view these values in-game, so you have to check your IVs by using an IV calculator and keep track of EVs as you train your Pokemon for XP. As you can imagine, it is an absolute chore to keep track of every single EVs and IVs for each individual Pokemon you plan on using. But without a doubt, the number one most daunting barrier to entry for most people is how to actually obtain these competitively viable Pokemons in the first place, especially without the creature comforts of the modern game. You couldn't just hyper-train your Pokemon to gain IVs, you couldn't just send your Pokemon on jobs to gain EVs, and you couldn't reuse TMs because they were only single-used items. Since the sheer time investment to create a competitive team is astronomical, it also means that experimenting with different Pokemons is virtually impossible. If only there was some way in which you can just skip all of that. Well, boy, do I have just the thing for you. And that thing's called save file editors. You might recognize them nowadays as PKHex, but back then people used either Pokesav or Pokegen. They're all made by different people, but all of them technically function the same. A save file editor is a third-party program that enables you to edit any parameters within the game, complete with a comprehensible UI. In short, you can basically generate any Pokemon you so desire by simply tinkering with the program a bit. While this process isn't necessarily difficult, especially when you compare it against the time you would have spent doing it the proper way, it does require a little bit of software know-how, which might have intimidated some people. Also, this process is technically, more like entirely considered cheating, but there are still some nuances here. When it comes to generating Pokemon, there are two main categories in which the result can fall under. The first category being illegal. This refers to a Pokemon that just simply would not be able to exist under normal gameplay on unmodified hardware. An example of this would be a Spiritomb with the ability Wonder Guard. Now, this example's a bit egregious, but even quote-unquote minor abnormalities could still be considered illegal. For example, in Fortune at least, Togekiss could not possibly have the moves Nasty Plot and Tri Attack simultaneously, because Nasty Plot is an egg move only obtainable in Fortune, yet Tri Attack is only obtainable as a move tutor in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. On the other end, there are what we call legal Pokemon. This just refers to Pokemons that theoretically could exist without any third-party influence, regardless of how improbable it would be. And because there was no way of preventing people from just bringing in overpowered illegal Pokemon, the community collectively established a gentleman's agreement to only battle using legal Pokemons. An honor system, basically. But some people still didn't get the memo, and you'd find someone with a Wonder Guard Spiritomb anyway. That was just how it goes, but I digress. The bottom line is that, for some people, the process of editing your save file might not be something that they're comfortable with, and the alternative of doing it all without the help of these programs was just flat out unreasonable. That said, the barriers of entry to competitive Pokemon aren't all entirely the game's fault. The Nintendo DS console itself was also partly to blame. The reason being is that connecting your device to Wi-Fi wasn't as straightforward as it should have been. At least that was the case for me. Now, how hard could it be, you know? Even toddlers nowadays could connect their mama's iPads to Wi-Fi. Was I just a really dumb kid? Well, to explain this, I need to first illustrate the technological landscape of the late 2000s. But before that, let me put a disclaimer that the following section would be making use of some technical terms which I'll try not to get too caught up on. Not because of time, but because I don't understand them well enough in the first place, and I don't want to make a fool out of myself. So anyways, in the late 2000s, Wi-Fi wasn't as ubiquitous as it is nowadays. The technology was still considered to be somewhat novel, so most households hadn't adopted a wireless router yet, which means that most kids couldn't even get their DS online in the first place. But when it eventually did enter the mainstream, there were some, shall we say, technical issues along the way. I remember when my dad first told me that we were finally getting a wireless router. By this time, 5th gen had already been out, but the point still stands. I was excited, jubilated, as that means that I didn't have to go out the house just to battle someone. But for some reason, I couldn't get my DS to connect to Wi-Fi. My older sister's laptop worked just fine. What gives? I was a stubborn kid though. I wasn't going to give up just because I didn't understand something. So I took matters into my own hand by, ironically, searching the web through my sister's laptop. So you see, contrary to popular belief, Wi-Fi isn't something that connects you to the internet. Not directly at least. It's more appropriate to think of Wi-Fi as a wireless Ethernet cable. So what Wi-Fi is basically doing is it connects your device to the router, which is connected to the modem, which is what actually connects you to the internet. But since it's wireless, anyone within range of the access point theoretically can also access your local network. So in order for your wireless router to prevent bad actors from accessing your local network, you usually set up a password to connect your device, which makes use of the built-in Wi-Fi security. Now, there are two main types of Wi-Fi security: Wired Equivalent Privacy, WEP, and Wi-Fi Protected Access, WPA. WEP is generally regarded as quite antiquated even back in the late 2000s, and is just way less secure, while WPA was seen as the modern successor, It was so good that they created WPA2 and even WPA3 more recently. So what this eventually boils down to is that this means that most wireless routers use the WPA2 security as default, which is good. But the Nintendo DS, frustratingly, does not support it. So, in my case, if I wanted to go battle someone online, then I'd have to go to the nearest McDonald's to connect to their free Wi-Fi. While doable, this wasn't exactly ideal in two ways. Firstly, I was still legally a child at the time, so I couldn't really just leave the house whenever. Secondly, since McDonald's Wi-Fi still employed the notoriously weak WEP security, I was prone to cyber attacks. But with the help of today's sponsor, but this was a great segue to a VPN ad integration, gosh darn it. In the end, I did finally manage to get my DS connected at home by changing my router's Wi-Fi security to WEP. But clearly, this wasn't ideal, and the process of connecting your device to Wi-Fi wasn't as straightforward as it should have been. Then again, this scenario might have been specific to my own experience, so do let me know down in the comments below if you guys also had the same problems back then. Evidently, getting into the competitive side of Pokemon was quite daunting at the time, but there did exist an alternative if you still wanted to get into it. And this is where I weave in Pokemon battle simulators back into the mix. Since the crux of competitive Pokemon only concerns the act of battling itself, the simulator doesn't threat the user with anything outside of it. If you can't be bothered to go look for opponents, it has an automatic matchmaker for you. If you can't spend the time to train up a team of competitively viable Pokemons, it can just create them for you. If you can't connect your Nintendo DS online, it doesn't even matter since you don't even need your DS. Pokemon Battle Simulators entirely bypasses all of these hurdles and streamlines the entire process to deliver the pure, unadulterated experience of competitive Pokemon. But ultimately, these are alternatives and not a replacement. For some, Pokemon Battle Simulators just simply strips away too much of what makes Pokemon, Pokemon. There's just no replacing the feel of actually whipping out your DS and battling someone using it. So while the competitive Pokemon scene was a promising angle for the company to catch a second wind, it was marred by several things holding it back from reaching its full potential, though it did manage to create its own niche and community. In the end, the Pokemon Company did just fine, but that's exactly what should be and what has been criticized. They did eventually find their second wind in Pokemon Go anyways, so I guess I know nothing in terms of growing a business after all. And folks, thank you all for watching, and see you next time.